Good morning. This is this week's Bible lesson, and it's called God Honored His People, and this is how the king honors Mordecai. Scripture focus is Esther 5 and 6. Now, if you remember, we have been talking about Haman and the king, and we've also been talking about this lady right here. You guys might remember who this is. This is Esther. We're going to continue our story about them today. So we have Haman is on the left here, and then King Ahasuerus. So Haman had convinced King Ahasuerus to sign a terrible new law. And if you guys remember what this is, we had it a couple weeks ago. Well, granted, at that time it was fancier, but this is a scroll, okay? And you would unravel it or open it. So Haman had talked the king into signing a new law. And it said, hear ye, on the 13th day of the 12th month, all the Jews throughout the kingdom shall be put to death by order of his majesty, King Ahasuerus. Even Esther would be killed, all because Haman hated Mordecai and the Jews. After Esther learned of the law, her cousin Mordecai asked her to go to King Ahasuerus to beg him to spare the lives of their people. But the king had not asked for Esther for 30 days. Anyone who went to the king without being asked was put to death, unless the king out his golden scepter to the person. Queen Esther decided to go to the king, even though it meant she might die. For 3 days and for 3 nights, Esther and all the Jews went without food and earnestly prayed to God. At the end of the 3rd day, Esther put on her most beautiful royal robes and her crown and went to see the king. So remember, here's King Ahasuerus. Here's Esther. She's all dressed up. She is... There we go. She's all dressed up, ready to meet with the king. But remember, he hasn't called for her, which is a little bit of a problem. At the end of the 3rd day, Esther put on her most beautiful robes and her crown, and she went before the king. And in Esther 5:2, it says, and it was so when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. And this is the scepter right here. It's this golden rod. And as it says, she reached out and she touched the top of it. What did King Ahasuerus do? He held out his scepter. It says, Esther, what is it you want? I will give you anything, even up to half of my kingdom. That's quite a bit. He offers to give her half of the kingdom. So let's see what it says in Esther 5:4. Esther 5:4, it says, and Esther answered, if it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day into the banquet, and that I have prepared for him. So Esther could have told the king, I'm a Jew, and her people were going to be killed by the new law. But Esther had another plan. Esther invited the king, and she invited Haman to a banquet. Of course, the king agreed to come, and he sent a message to Haman that he was invited to. Because remember, it was just Esther and King Ahasuerus that were meeting. Haman was very pleased with himself. How about that? I am to dine with the king and with Esther. I'm going to dine with the king and queen of Persia. Truly, I am the favorite. I shall have power and fame, Haman thought to himself. At the banquet, Esther did not tell the king what she wanted. Instead, she invited King Ahasuerus and Haman to another banquet. Now Haman was very excited. So we're still talking about Esther here, and she's planning a banquet's like a feast. 2 banquets with the queen. 2. Haman hurried home to tell his wife, "You and I are going to be the wealthiest and most important people in the whole entire kingdom. The queen has invited me to another banquet. Now I can ask the king for anything and get my way." "Well, hurry and build gallows to hang Mordecai and put him to death," she said. And that is what wicked Haman did. That night, King Ahasuerus could not sleep. He tossed and he turned in his bed, and this is the only picture I have of him, sorry. But he could not sleep. He called for his servant, and his servant read to him from the record book. And this is kind of what the records of the scroll would look like. Okay, there's another picture of it. So his servant read from the scroll and read the records to King Ahasuerus. And this is what he said. He said, as he's walking back and forth with the scroll and looking, the servant read about the time when Mordecai had saved the king's life by revealing an evil plot. King Ahasuerus asked, "What was done for this brave and honorable Mordecai?" "Why, nothing, your majesty," responded the servant. "Tomorrow I shall reward that man," the king decided, and went to sleep. When Haman came to the palace the next morning, wonder what happened. So when Haman came to the palace the next morning, he planned to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai that very day. Wonder if the king's going to do that. "Haman, just the man I want to see," began King Ahasuerus. "Tell me, what should I do for a man I wish to honor?" "The king wants to honor me," he thought to himself. And in Esther 6, 8 and 9, let's see what it says. Esther 6, 8 and 9. "Let the royal apparel be brought which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor." "Excellent," agreed the king. "Excellent. Go do all those things for Mordecai." What do you think Haman probably thought of what was going on? I don't know. Let's find out. Haman, he was shocked and angry, but he had to follow the king's orders. And so Haman, he went to do the king's command. And this is what they did. Haman is here with the king. Okay, they're going to do the king's command. Sorry, this is not the king. This is Mordecai. Mordecai was dressed in royal robes. This is Mordecai. And he was seated on top of the king's horse. As you can see, the king's horse is highly decorated, very fancy. But Mordecai was placed on the king's horse, which obviously Haman did not agree with because he had wanted to kill Mordecai. How do you think Haman feels now? He probably still feels very angry. Well, Haman, he had let Mordecai ride the king's horse as was commanded by the king, and they had gone through the streets, and everybody could see Mordecai on the king's horse, and Haman was leading him. Well, Haman hurried back to his house as he took Mordecai back to the palace gates. He told his wife and friends what had just happened, and they all agreed that this was not a good thing to happen to Haman. It was embarrassing, and he was in danger of losing his place with the king. Just then, the king's servants came to take him to Esther's second banquet. And that is where we're going to leave off with today. Okay, our Bible verse today, which is Mordecai riding on the king's horse here. It says, "He that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth honor." Proverbs 21:21. He that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth honor. Proverbs 21:21. Okay, let's review really quick. Who was able to ride on the king's horse? If you said Mordecai, you are correct. Who is this lady right here? We've been talking about her for a couple of weeks now. Esther, that's right. And Esther was, if you remember, she was related to Mordecai. They were family. What were Esther and Mordecai? What made them different? They were Jews, and that was not allowed at that time, but they managed to keep it a secret. Who is this individual? Haman. He was not thrilled with the king's way or the king's plan to show honor to Mordecai for what he had done. It's very evil, man. You guys remember what this is called? This is the golden scepter. And in this week's story, Esther touched the top of it. So Esther, she touched the top of the royal scepter. And finally, do you guys remember what this is called? We've talked about it a couple different times. It is a scroll, and this is what the new law was written on. All right, I will see you guys next time. I hope you enjoy your day and you learn something new. Bye.